Hey guys, it's David. Today I want to walk through a quick understanding of debt service coverage ratio. There seems to be a lot of confusion about this continuously, and I want to try to clear the air. And I think I'm in a good place to do that because I happen to work on both sides. I work on residential real estate and I also work on commercial real estate. And that's really where the confusion comes from. So let's jump in. First and foremost, DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. Now, if you're in residential versus commercial, then you know that on residential real estate, meaning primary homes, you're going to be living in the home, you need to get a loan for your home. Those loans are all recourse. Versus in commercial real estate, they are mostly all non-recourse. There are some times when a commercial loan is recourse, specifically just depending on the risk, i.e. if there's no asset there to go after on a construction or on a significant rehab, they're going to be full recourse and then partial recourse. But in general, commercial loans are non-recourse. What does it mean? It means that on a recourse loan, the lender can look to the borrower to make that loan whole. Whereas on a non-recourse loan, that they can only look to the property. And this is where debt service coverage ratio comes into play, because when you're dealing with primary residential, it's a distinction. A debt service coverage loan is a loan type. And it's a distinction between if you're a residential mortgage broker, or you are a residential realtor, or you're a residential investor, you're typically buying single family homes or small 1 to 4 property fixed to flips or whatever it might be, then you hear this term all the time. I'm looking for a debt service coverage ratio loan, a DSCR loan. Why do we say that? We say that because it's in contrast to a primary loan. A primary loan is going to be full recourse to the borrower, right? Versus a DSCR loan on a commercial property, meaning a business purpose or an investment property, is going to be non-recourse, and the only place the lender can look is to the property. Therefore, you're making a distinction, and we call it a DSCR loan to make a distinction through it versus a traditional residential loan. That's how it's used in the primary world. In traditional commercial real estate, if you walked into a commercial bank or a commercial mortgage brokerage or a commercial lender and you said, I need a DSCR loan, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. They really wouldn't, because to them, a DSCR is just a loan metric. It's one of several different metrics that we use, several different measures that we use to evaluate a loan and determine its strength or its weakness relatively against other loans. So that's mainly the difference is whether you're going to look at DSCR as a type of loan or a loan metric. In both cases, it's the same. DSCR means the same thing. It's used in the same way. It's just how we look at it. So let's move on a little bit and let's get into the meat and grinder of this, of what is a DSCR loan. So debt service, don't get confused by the term. It just means mortgage payment. That's it. That's all it means. So typically you might often see this written as either MDS or ADS. MDS meaning monthly debt service, or ADS meaning annual debt service. When I run a property analysis, you'll very often see in my spreadsheet, you'll see ADS, and it stands for annual debt service, because I usually run my numbers on an annual level. To calculate the DSCR, you simply take the NOI, which is the net operating income. And in commercial real estate, we use terms that are slightly different. We use net operating income versus net income. It really means the same thing. And then it's your NOI over your debt service. So it's a measure of how much money the property makes and is it able to cover the mortgage payment. It's a cushion. I always think of it like a cushion. How much extra money does the property have after paying all of the expenses and after paying the mortgage payment? How much money do you have left over? That's all this is measuring. Obviously, the more money you have left over, the more durable, the more resilient, the more this property is going to be able to withstand any kind of hiccups or burps that come into the economy. This property will be able to weather those and pay the mortgage payment. And that's really all the lenders care about, right? They want their money back and they want their monthly interest payment. They want their monthly mortgage payment. This is how they measure. This is one way that they measure that. So it's typically written as either a 1-to-5. In multifamily, I've got a 1-1-5, a 1-2, or a 1-to-5 DSCR ratio. In different asset types, the typical DSCR requirements from a lender will be a little bit different. The more risky the property, the higher the DSCR requirement typically. So on a hotel or a motel, the lenders are probably going to want to look for a higher 1.35, 1.45, and maybe even higher DSCR ratio. On multifamily and other stable asset types, they're willing to go a little bit lower. So sometimes you'll see it written as a 1.0 or even a 0.75. And you might be scratching your head and think for yourself, why would a lender ever make a 0.75 DSCR ratio loan? If they know, because 0.75 would mean you don't even have enough money to pay the mortgage payment. So if the lender knows they're not going to get paid the first month, why would they make the loan? The answer is it's probably a renovation project, some significant turnaround, and they have confidence that you and your business plan for the property are going to be able to very quickly raise the property's income up to the point where you'll be able to get to a 115, 125, whatever it might be. And the lender's probably even willing to give you some of that money in the loan to help make those renovations. But this is untypical. This is more of a private lender. A traditional commercial bank is not giving you a 0.75 debt service coverage ratio metric on a loan. It's typically for a private lender or even a hard money lender. Let's look at a real life example. So over here, we're looking at a property that has revenue of $100,000, operating expenses of $45,000, and NOI therefore of $55,000. So 100 of revenue minus my $45,000 of operating expenses leads me to an NOI of $55,000. Then from there, I still have to pay my debt service. So from the $55,000, let's just say this was a given. I know you're wondering where did any of these numbers come from, but let's just say this was a given that you had a $45,800 debt service payment, and that would give you $9,200 of cash flow left over. Immediately, you know this is greater than 1 debt service coverage ratio because you can see that there's enough NOI to pay the mortgage payment and still have something left over. Good. Let's calculate it out. DSCR equals my NOI 55,000 over my debt service 45,800, which calculates out to be a 120. That's exactly how I would say it. Oh, this property has a 120 debt service coverage ratio. And that's it. That's all you need to know about how to calculate debt service coverage ratio. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. Don't let it get more complicated than that. Just get these simple numbers, stop there, and you're good to know. The thing you'll notice about this metric is that it's going to take into account all of the revenue and all of the expenses. There are other metrics that lenders use that don't take in some of the revenue. They might just go off property value. For example, a loan to value, an LTV, or a loan to cost, LTC. Don't deal with revenue or expenses. And if you're interested in learning more about this, you should go to byomm.com, the Be Your Own Mogul Masterclass that I teach. We go through this in much more depth and really explain how lenders use debt service coverage ratio. And that's important because you as an investor or even as a mortgage broker, you should be aware of DSCR and you should be able to think like a lender continuously because you need to be aware that if you're going to get involved with a property and spend time and effort and even some money evaluating and chasing after a property, if you know that it's going to have a very low DSCR ratio, it might be a non-starter before you even begin because you won't be able to get a mortgage on that. You want to know that before you spend time dealing with property. So, go to byomm.com. That's where we'll deal with this in much more depth. I just want to conclude by showing you how I visually think of the debt service coverage ratio. So in this little bar chart I've created down here, this entire chart is my NOI. That's why I've got NOI written on the top. And then I've broken it up and say, okay, within the amount of NOI that I have, I've got to do two things. I've got to pay my mortgage, which is my debt service, and then whatever little bit I have left over, or hopefully not little bit, hopefully a big bit, whatever bit I have left over, that's my cash flow. I'm going to pay myself and my investors from that cash flow. So I'm just trying to show you visually that this is really what we're measuring. We're measuring the coverage ratio. We call it a DSCR, a debt service coverage ratio, but really what you're measuring is how big or how small is the coverage. That's it, right? The 1.0 is my mortgage payment, and then the amount left over is my coverage ratio. And that's what I'm measuring here. So I like to think of this, and I like to visualize it this way. And I've got a 20% cushion. My property could be impacted by the economy, by a change in the renovation that I'm doing, by bad management or good management. It could be impacted 20%, and I would still be able to make that mortgage payment. That's what you want to know. That's what lenders want to know. So hope that helps. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.